Nobody knew anything about the man who stopped the terrorist attack until the security footage went viral on social media. Welcome to Shadow Veteran Stories. Before we begin this incredible story of hidden heroes and split-second decisions, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These moments matter. The London Underground never sleeps. Even at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night, King's Cross Street, Pancras Station buzzed with the last commuters catching the final Northern Line trains. The fluorescent lights cast long shadows across the platform, and the familiar echo of footsteps mixed with the distant rumble of approaching trains. James Carter pushed his cleaning cart methodically across the platform tiles. He wore the same navy blue uniform he'd worn for 3 years. London Transport Cleaning Contractor, badge number 2847. Nobody ever looked at his badge. Nobody ever looked at him, really. He was part of the infrastructure, as invisible as the CCTV cameras that tracked his every movement. At 43, James had perfected the art of being unremarkable. Average height, graying brown hair, weathered hands that spoke of manual labor. He moved with quiet efficiency, mopping up the day's mess of coffee spills, dropped newspapers, and the thousand small traces that millions of commuters left behind. But what nobody knew, not his supervisor, not the transport police, not the passengers who stepped around him without a second glance, was that James Carter had once been something very different. 15 years ago, he'd worn a different uniform. SAS Regiment, 22 Special Air Service. The kind of training that never really leaves your system, even when you're trying your hardest to forget it. The trauma counselor had recommended civilian routine work. Something predictable, she'd said. Something that would help his mind process what he'd seen in Afghanistan. The nightmares had been getting worse, and the hypervigilance that had kept him alive in Helmand Province made normal life almost impossible. So James had chosen the underground. The rhythmic work, the same routes every night, the anonymity. It helped, most nights, but this wasn't going to be one of those nights. At 11:52 p.m., Platform 3 was nearly empty, just a few stragglers waiting for the last train to High Barnet. James noticed them out of habit. Situational awareness was a hard habit to break. An elderly woman clutching a shopping bag, 2 university students sharing earphones, a businessman in a wrinkled suit probably heading home after a long day. And then there was the bag. It sat alone on bench 7, about 20 meters from where James was working. Black canvas messenger bag, fairly new, with nothing particularly distinctive about it. The kind of bag that thousands of Londoners carried every day. But it had been there for 12 minutes. James knew this because he'd noticed it when he'd first started cleaning this section. In his previous life, 12 minutes was enough time for an IED timer to complete its cycle. 12 minutes was enough time for a pressure plate to arm itself. 12 minutes was enough time for everything to go wrong. He tried to push the thoughts away. This was London, not Kabul. This was a messenger bag, not a bomb. This was paranoia, not intuition. But his hands had stopped moving the mop. The businessman walked past the bag without a glance. The students were too absorbed in their music. The elderly woman was focused on the departure board, checking when her train would arrive. James looked up at the CCTV camera positioned above Platform 3, red light blinking steadily, recording everything. He wondered if anyone was actually monitoring the feeds at this hour, or if they just stored the footage for later review. Probably the latter. Budget cuts had reduced live monitoring to peak hours only. The bag sat there, innocuous and patient. James's training kicked in before his conscious mind could stop it. He began moving closer, using his cleaning routine as cover, mopping in a pattern that would bring him within visual inspection range. He'd seen enough improvised explosive devices to know what to look for: suspicious wires, unusual weight distribution, the kind of amateur mistakes that separated real threats from forgotten belongings. But as he got closer, Something else caught his attention. The bag wasn't zipped properly. A small gap at the top revealed a glimpse of what was inside. Wires, red and blue wires. James Carter's world suddenly snapped back into sharp focus. The kind of hyper-awareness that had kept him alive through 17 classified operations in 3 different countries. Every sound became amplified, the hum of the escalators, the distant rumble of an approaching train, his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. He glanced around the platform again. The businessman was checking his phone. The students were laughing at something on their shared screen. The elderly woman was digging through her shopping bag looking for her Oyster card. Innocent people, unaware, exactly 12 meters away from what James was now certain was an active explosive device. The digital platform clock read 11:54 p.m. The last train to High Barnet was due in 4 minutes. James had a choice to make. He could call the British Transport Police, but by the time they arrived, assessed the situation, and called in the bomb disposal unit, it would be too late. The train would arrive, more passengers would board, the platform would fill with people. Or he could handle it himself. His hands were steady as he reached for his mobile phone, but instead of dialing 999, he opened the camera function. If this went wrong, someone needed to know what happened. The CCTV footage might not capture the details, but his phone camera would. James set the phone against his cleaning cart, angled to record both him and the suspicious bag. Then he did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He became a soldier again. Moving with the same quiet precision that had once made him invisible in enemy territory, James approached the bag. Each step was calculated, minimizing vibration, avoiding sudden movements that might trigger a motion sensor. The wires were definitely attached to something inside. Through the gap in the zipper, he could make out what looked like a digital timer, red numbers counting down. 3:47, 3:46, 3:45. Less than 4 minutes. James's mind raced through the possibilities. This was either a very sophisticated device designed to cause maximum casualties when the train arrived, or it was amateur hour. Someone who'd watched too many movies and thought they understood explosives. Given the location and timing, he was betting on amateur, which meant it was probably more dangerous, not less. Professionals built reliable devices. Amateurs built unpredictable ones. The elderly woman looked up from her shopping and noticed James crouching near the bag. "Excuse me, love," she called out. "Did someone leave that there?" "I've been wondering if I should turn it into lost property." James looked at her. Sweet, concerned, completely unaware that she was standing in the blast radius of what appeared to be an active bomb. "Ma'am," James said quietly, his voice carrying an authority that surprised both of them, "I need you to move to the other end of the platform. Right now. Don't run, just walk quickly." Something in his tone made her listen. She gathered her shopping bag and started moving toward the exit, glancing back with worried eyes. The university students noticed the interaction and pulled out their earphones. "Everything all right, mate?" one of them called. "Move away from this area," James said, louder now. "All of you, platform emergency." The businessman looked up from his phone, annoyed. "What kind of emergency? I've got a train to catch. 250, 249. "Sir, you need to evacuate this platform immediately," James said, standing up. The authority in his voice was unmistakable now. This wasn't a cleaning contractor speaking. This was someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. The businessman started to argue, but something about James's posture stopped him. The way he stood, balanced on the balls of his feet, hands relaxed, but ready. The way his eyes constantly scanned the environment, cataloging threats and escape routes. "Is that," the student pointed at the bag, "is that a bomb? Move, now." James's voice cut through the platform noise like a blade. Finally, they listened. The businessman, the students. Even a few other passengers who'd been waiting further down the platform. They all began moving toward the exits, some walking quickly, others breaking into nervous jogs. James was alone with the device, 214, 213, 212. He knelt beside the bag again, this time committed to action. Using techniques he'd learned in a classified course whose name he couldn't even mention, James carefully opened the zipper. The device was cruder than he had expected, but no less deadly. Homemade explosives, probably fertilizer-based, judging by the smell, wired to a simple digital timer. Red wire to positive, blue wire to negative. Classic amateur setup. But there was a third wire, yellow, and that changed everything. A trembler switch, movement-sensitive backup detonator. If he tried to move the bag or cut the wrong wire, it would explode immediately. 147, 146, 145. James closed his eyes for a moment, running through his training. In Afghanistan, he'd disarmed 17 IEDs. But that had been with a full bomb disposal kit, backup support, and plenty of time to think. This was different. This was a tube platform in central London with only his bare hands in less than 2 minutes. The distant rumble grew louder. Let's see if he can defuse the bomb or not. We will find out in the next video. Subscribe and don't forget to like. What do you think he should do?